Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Extra Lab podcast. Today we are extremely lucky enough to have with us Olin Hacker. Olin, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. So Olin, we're talking about it a little bit before the podcast started, but you got some big news today. So if you would like to say.
Yeah, this morning I was selected for the World Indoor Team. I was waiting to see if I got in on World Ranking, and I've been selected for the 3K. So really excited about that.
Definitely. I mean, is this the first time you'll be representing or?
Yeah, I've represented the U.S. in the World Road Championships last October in Riga, Latvia. I ran the Road 5K, and then I've actually also made a junior track team as well, way back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, it just must be like such an exciting position to be in to make a world team. For anyone who's not familiar, what's the process for that?
Yeah, so for this one, there was the indoor nationals, and to be to be like selected or a preferred athlete by the US, you had to place top two in that meet. And
Mhm.
then you also had to either have the world standard or, in my case, have high enough world ranking to qualify for the meet. And yeah, I was able to have high enough world ranking, so
It's
I'm
just
racing.
exciting. I mean, that's just got to be such an exciting feeling. Mostly, the 3K coming up at World is going to be one just filled with great runners and like yourself. So it must be exciting to get going and getting ready to get just moving. So last weekend you placed second at Indoor Natties. Take us through that race. I mean, it's been an exciting time to be Olin recently, it seems.
Yeah, it was a great race, and going into it, I felt good about where my fitness was at. I ran one other race this indoor season. I ran a 5K at Boston,
Hmm.
and I ran 13:08, which was a 1 second PR for me, but it was a little bittersweet just because it was a couple seconds off that Olympic standard.
Hmm.
Um, but I after that race, I knew I was really fit, ready to go. But I also felt like I made some mistakes in that race and wasn't quite like really focused in those last couple laps, and I kind of let a few people get away from me, got out kicked.
Hmm.
And I feel like sometimes it's hard in just like a pace race like that because you just go and you just try to run fast and you try to turn your brain off.
Hmm.
Um, but so yeah, going into this one, I really tried to shift my mindset. And instead of like getting ready for a pace race, getting ready for a championship race.
Hmm.
No one cares how fast we're gonna run. It was also at altitude, so that's a
Yeah.
whole another factor. And so basically, I was just going in trying to win.
Hmm.
And my plan for that was kind of to stay relaxed early. I knew there was a lot of good guys in that. Like obviously Yarad, who ended up winning, he's had a heck of a year, but also just like in the past couple weeks, he's shown really good fitness. And in the same race as me in Boston, he ran 12:58. Just run one Milrose in the mile. So I had to watch out for him. And then I mean, two other guys that I was thinking specifically because I had already raced them, or they were in Boston. They're actually in a different heat, but Morgan Beatlescombe and Abdi Hamid Nur had
Hmm.
both already ran faster than me in the 5K. So I really knew I had to pay attention to them. And so yeah, I was just watching them. It was making sure I stayed near the front.
Hmm.
And then I wanted to take a risk. I wanted to make a move. And so about 600 to go, I went to the front. Um, and Yard and Morgan Beatlescombe ended up responding. They passed me, and I was able to pass Beatlescombe back in the last 200.
Definitely. I mean, last 200 you got him, placed second. Little excitement, little good racing. I mean, so what is it like? I mean, you've run for Nas, obviously, like so you're familiar with altitude, but going from sea level in Boston to just running at altitude in US indoors.
Yeah, that was another part of the thing that I talked to my coaches about and we kind of planned for because I could have potentially done other races this indoor season, but
Mhm.
then like the timing probably would have ended up where I was racing the week before US Nationals.
Mhm.
And so then likely that would have meant a race at sea level and then traveling up to altitude to race. And yeah, my coaches and I thought it would be best to just kind of after racing in Boston, I'd have 3 weeks before USA's. And so yeah, we just, we're at altitude. We're in Flagstaff. I'm actually higher than Albuquerque is. Um, and yeah, so I feel like that was an advantage. We were able to do some workouts at altitude. We were able to go down and do some fast workouts as well. And
Mhm,
just like, and I feel like now having been training at altitude for a year and a half, I feel like I've learned a bit more about how my body responds to racing and running hard at altitude or training at altitude. But also I think my body's just adapted. I think that's the main thing. And I feel like it does better. Like definitely last winter, um, in around indoor track time, I was like really starting to do some intensity stuff up at altitude for the first time, and I did not do that well at it. Like I just had workouts where I just couldn't finish, and I would go lactic, and I wouldn't come back. And so I think really a big thing is my body's adapted.
mhm,
And yeah, so in the race, like obviously it wasn't like the fastest time, but like through the early stages, like everything felt really good. And then even like starting to close it down, like I felt like all the gears were there, and I felt that, I mean, that's something we practiced at altitude. But yeah, in the race setting, like the gears were there. I was able to go to them. I was able to run fast.
mhm.
Um, and yeah, so it worked out.
Yeah, and when you're like, obviously you're in a championship style race where gears, it makes or breaks your placement. How do you just keep the gears, even if like if the race were to go out hot, which it didn't necessarily, how would you say maintaining having gears for the latter parts?
Yeah, I think it's knowing it's coming. And then just like I think because physically if it's there it's there, and if it's not it's not. And so sometimes there's nothing you can do.
Mhm,
But for me physically it was there, so it's staying engaged mentally, I think, is the thing. And going in, like I kind of expected Abdi Hamid to try to get to the front, just having raced him before. And I raced him actually at NCAA indoors in the 3K.
mhm,
The year he won the 5K and 3K double. And in that race, he went to the front and didn't let anybody past him. And
mhm,
I was like, okay, let's watch out for that, because if he gets to the front, everyone might be in trouble.
mhm,
Um, and sure enough, he got to the front. But then at that point, then I was just kind of more prepared for that. And I feel like just with the race plan in mind, and with the thought in mind that I really wanted to try to get past him,
mhm,
made it easier to execute that in a race. Like I think sometimes in the later stage of the race when things are getting hard, you're starting to hurt. It's
mhm,
it's hard to make those decisions, but if you've kind of made the decision before the race, it's easier to just go and do it rather than have to like think through and try to make a decision
mhm.
while you're hurting in a race.
Mhm. Yeah, and when you're making that decision before you race, maybe it's like the week leading up, mentally, how do you just stay engaged in the week going into a big race?
Yeah, early in the week before USA's, I was actually really nervous, and I honestly wasn't feeling the most confident.
Mhm,
Um, but just kind of going into the race, it was just I just had to keep telling myself over and over, like, I can do this, I'm good enough. And then yeah, kind of in the days before the race, I watched some old race videos
mhm,
of like myself and my competition. And I just like started to get excited about the race, and like excited to see how I could do
mhm,
rather than being worried about the outcome. And I feel like in a way too, I started to think like, you know what, my goal in this is to be competitive and learn how to compete at this level rather than necessarily get top two. And so I feel like that took some of the pressure off. So I was like, okay, if I go into this race and I make some moves and run as hard as I can be happy with that
mhm.
without worrying about how I finish.
Yeah, definitely. So, you said you were a little nervous in the beginning of the week and you had to like kind of, just turn that fear, not even fear, just nerves into a like excitement. And if it panned out, it works out well for you.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it seems like at least for your season building up, being in BU and then going here, like race wise, it seems like the wave keeps going. And what are you looking to do with the upcoming seasons?
Yeah, I mean, now the focus, at least short term, is Worlds, and there I think it's the same thing. I think it's a really fun opportunity just because
Mhm,
there's not a lot of pressure. And I can just go and run as hard as I can and try to beat some people, and that's really exciting. exciting. Um, Kind of heading through the rest of the spring, the goal for me, as of everyone else, is to make the Olympic team.
Mhm,
And so to do that, I've got a couple things I need to do first. Ideally, would be to run the Olympic standard in the 5K. There
mhm.
would still be an opportunity for me. You can still get in on world ranking, but you don't want to have to have it come to that.
Mhm.
So I'll run a 5K outdoors, which will be a focus. It'll be sound running 5K in May. I'll look to run the Olympic standard there, and then everything else is prepping for the U.S. Olympic trials.
Yeah, and for anyone who's watching this, I mean, maybe it's not an Olympic standard. If it is, thank you for watching this. I'm honored. But if maybe it's like trying to make a national meet standard like New Balance or Nike, what advice would you give to them for that one race? Just knowing, even if it relies on that race, just staying with it.
Yeah. See, that is a tough thing, and then because there, like, just as I was talking about, like, me being scared or nervous for like the outcome of a race, like
Mhm.
going into a race where the goal is to get or just where the goal is to get a time, it's very outcome based. And so you either get it or you don't, and that can be really scary, because if you don't, that's just a failure.
Yeah.
Um and so I think at some point you kind of have to, you have to accept your goals, and accept there's a chance of failure, but I think you kind of widen your focus a little bit. You have to kind of reconcile the fact that, like, it's possible that I don't get this, and like and give yourself some grace for that. But I think also, just like in terms of training, like, you do everything you can to get yourself in that shape. And if you're able to do that, if you're able to plan your workouts, and then, successfully do the workouts and do the training block, then you just at some point have to take a lot of confidence from that and just believe in yourself and go for it.
Yeah, I mean, just let it loose a little bit. For you,
Yeah.
getting ready and like getting the workouts right, and maybe this is more like a Nas elite training question, but how does like tape running work and getting ready for big races?
Yeah. It depends on the race, definitely, and it depends on the point of the season, because like when you're trying to run a really good race like mid-season, but you still have races after, obviously it's going to be somewhat of a smaller taper
Mhm,
than like the last race of your season. But it's the same concept either way, and I guess in general how I do it, how we do it at NAZ is we will we'll have our last like really big workout probably about 10 days out.
mhm,
Um, and then kind of after that, then I'll do a long run like the weekend before, but it'll be a little bit shorter. And
mhm,
then kind of just the week of the race, um, I'll do a workout that's less volume,
mhm,
with a little bit of threshold probably, but a little bit of like pace work, just to stay used to the pace that I'm hoping to race at, and then probably a little bit of work that's a little bit faster, just getting ready to close. Um, and then yeah, so then just easy miles in the lead up. The day before is low volume, some 200s, but it's just, yeah, it's lowering volume. Um, it's not super complicated. It's just kind of letting your body absorb the work that you've done to get ready to replicate it in a race.
yeah, definitely. And I mean, just getting ready. As everyone probably knows by this point, you're doing the 3K, and you ran a 5K earlier. So how different is the 3K from the 5K in indoor?
Um, it's pretty different. I think the main difference between the races, kind of what I already touched on, just being the goals of the race being, championship race versus a paced race. So then the tactics really come into it. But I feel like, just in terms of distances, starting at 5K and then working down to a 3K
Mhm,
can be pretty nice, just because you have that you have that good strength base from the 5K. And then yeah, you just have to sharpen up a little bit more, get used to a bit of a faster pace for the 3K.
mhm,
But those kind of changes happen pretty quickly. I feel like doing one kind of 3K specific workout
mhm.
will get you used to running 3K pace a lot faster.
Yeah.
Especially if you have that strength base.
Yeah, and as you become a member of the world team, which is crazy saying like just out loud. I mean, it's a huge accomplishment, but as you get ready for that, what's the one thing you're looking forward to the most, if there can be one?
Yeah, I think two things. I think one is just like to get out on the world stage and race. I mean, it's such an amazing opportunity just to be able to race the best in the world, and I feel like I can do really well, and I think it's also going to be really valuable experience for me. And
Mhm.
then I think the other thing is just I think it's really fun to be able to travel with, the USA track team. Like, yeah, there's so many amazing athletes. And I feel like just to be teammates with them is really cool.
Yeah, and does this moment, like just being a member of the team, like boost the confidence going out to trying to make the Olympic team?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think back to specifically Nikki Hiltz last winter, and they won the 15 indoors, and then well, you look at it, they went and won the 15 outdoors. And obviously that's just one example. But you just look at that and you're like, okay, I'm on the right track.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, in running, it's always nice seeing people just kind of set the way and just knowing, seeing what they can do to like know what you can do. But that's always nice. And
Yeah.
in running, like, what's been your inspiration?
I think my inspiration, at least especially early, was my family. My dad was a professional runner in his own right. And then I have two older brothers and a younger sister who all have run at various levels. And so
Mhm,
I feel like they were kind of the ones that inspired me to get into it. And yeah, I feel like that's really where I developed my love of running. And
mhm,
then from there, it's just community, right? It's running with my high school team, with my college team, with my professional team now. Um, and like running with those communities, for those communities, working together, having fun together,
mhm.
accomplishing goals together. I think that's what, yeah, has kept me going forward.
Yeah, and gotta ask, was your dad a distance runner?
He was, yeah. Yeah, his main event was like the 1500, but
Mhm.
he uh he was a very good cross country runner as well. Yeah.
Well, what did he run for the 15?
He ran 335
Oh, gee.
in like in probably like the late 80s, I think.
Um,
Um
he was a sponsored athlete, you said?
yeah, he was sponsored by Nike
Oh, geez.
for most of his career. He was also the NCAA cross country champion in 1985
Oh,
as well for Wisconsin. Yeah,
oh, Wisconsin. There you go. A little family
exactly. Yeah,
right
so he
there.
went to Wisconsin. I grew up there, and I followed in his footsteps.
Definitely. Is it kind of cool, just keeping that legacy alive and going to Wisconsin? I mean, you're a national champion yourself in track. Like, is it kind of nice?
Oh, very much. I think from like from a young age, like I wasn't competing and running or anything. I was like a soccer player.
Hmm.
But I like knew that my dad was this like really good athlete, really good runner, and I always was really proud of that for him.
Hmm.
And so I kind of hoped from that young age that then maybe I could do start to do some of these things that he did. And yeah, I think in a big way that started with competing at Wisconsin, which I kind of when I started running, I had no concept of if that would be something that was possible for me. Something else we both accomplished, we both broke in 4 in the mile. We're
Hmm.
one of I think there's maybe now like 15 father-son duos that have both broken 4 in the mile.
Hmm.
Um, and then yeah, when I won NCAAs, then we had both won NCAAs for Wisconsin. Then I was able to go pro. Like I feel like just being able to do this stuff that I knew that he did and I thought was like so cool. Being able to do it myself has really been amazing.
Yeah, and your father obviously was an amazing runner, So what was it like just having him there, and having him have that great perspective, understanding all your highs and lows and just having him there for you?
Yeah, I feel like he did a really good job with it. And I think it's tough to be a parent of an athlete, because obviously you want what's best for them, but you kind of have to let them do it themselves. And I feel like just because he had so much success and was a professional himself, like he already lived out his dream. So I think that in some ways allowed him to let us live out our own, me and my siblings, and like offer advice when we needed it, because we needed it and he had it.
Mhm.
um but also just like step back and let us figure some things out for ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like running such a personal sport where, you can get a lot of great guidance, which is very helpful, but a lot of it is just figuring it out for yourself and
Yeah,
figuring
yeah, it has to come from within, definitely.
and having your dad have the ability just to know what it takes to get to the next level, did that help you at all becoming the runner you are today?
Yeah, I think it did. I think for him, almost like with him knowing exactly what it takes,
Hmm.
I at some point like yeah, he could advise me, and he like I think he knows the steps. And I think also, I guess in high school, like I mean, this was really down to my high school coach, but like I was trained conservatively, I think, and so I had a lot of room to grow through college, and I think I've got room to grow now.
Hmm.
But I feel like he number one was able to help me take a long-term perspective at things, but two, like he knew what it was going to take. He knew how hard it was, and I don't know if that it necessarily helps to know how hard it's going to be,
Hmm.
but it just like yeah, I feel like it just gave he had perspective, and he could kind of give some of that perspective to me, like when things aren't necessarily going well, or when progress is coming slowly, that just like yeah, this is hard, like he's like, I get it, this is hard, just keep trying.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. And Olin, what are you when you're not running, what are you up to?
um Recently, uh I feel like I've been doing a lot of like walking my dog outside in the woods.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, since moving to Flagstaff, I've really been there's like Flagstaff is just like surrounded by the national forest, and there's all these trails. So my girlfriend and I like walking our dog in the woods.
Hmm.
Another interesting thing we've done in the past year is we bought a Sprinter van,
Okay.
um, and we've been converting it to be able to like camp out of it,
Hmm.
and then like we'll see. She wants to live in it at some point. I'm not so sure. I don't know.
I mean,
Um,
the van life seems pretty cool, but
it
mostly
does seem cool.
Flagstaff.
But yeah, I think maybe like even like after I retire from running, we could like live in it for a bit, and then like after that, then decide where we want to move, or if we want to stay in. I don't know. Who knows? That's a long way down the line. But yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, it took a ton of time to convert it, and yeah, and we're still working through it, but that's something we've been working on.
yeah. Former guest of the podcast, Craig Ingles. He lived in a van for a little bit. He converted a van. So I mean, maybe van life's just a running thing. I don't know. It seems to be
It's
a little common around.
it's certainly a vibe at the very least.
Yeah. What's the nature like in Flagstaff?
It's like it's ponderosa pine forest. So it's like kind of how the forests are. There's these like really tall ponderosas, but then there's not that much undergrowth.
Hmm.
So it's like it's pretty sparse. So it's like it's really pretty because you can just like see all the trunks, but like your view's not obstructed. And then it's just like, rocky. There's the mountains, like
Hmm.
I mean, we're in the mountains. I think it's a volcanic mountain, so it's like not a big mountain range. But yeah, you can just see the mountains, and then in the winter it gets pretty snowy,
Hmm.
um, which is beautiful, hard for running, but it's pretty short lived because it's nice and sunny up here.
Yeah. I mean, as a Wisconsin guy, it must not be like Wisconsin weather it's how different is it from Flagstaff? Is it like similar at all or?
Yeah, it's different. I think Wisconsin is just it's way colder. And so I think that's even though we get like a real winter in Flagstaff, it's just like it warms up during the day, and the sun is so strong
Mhm.
that it's just like the lows just aren't that low, and then it'll warm up during the day, so the snow melts fast.
Yeah.
Um that said though, I feel like last winter I was like kind of cocky going into it because I was like, oh, I did Midwest winters, this will be easy. And
Mhm.
then it snowed a ton. And
Yeah,
I was like not ready for it. But it hasn't snowed that much this winter, so
as a Massachusetts member, I
Mhm.
will say
Yeah,
we have the great feeling of nature. It'll go and snow, and then it'll get right before all the snow melts, and then it'll get warm, and then another snowstorm will just come right back, and it's a great
yeah.
feeling, gets you going a little bit, but I mean that's just part of the
It's
Northeast, I
tough.
guess.
It just breaks your spirit after some point.
Yeah, I mean, mostly like indoor tracks are hard to come by for high schoolers, so
Yeah,
like
that's good.
it's a little fun. Mostly when we end up doing workouts, we'll be on a half iced track, and then it's a bunch of it's like cross country, but more of the
Yeah.
country part. But yeah, as you said, you had a dog. What breed of dog?
Um, I don't exactly know what breed he is. We think he's like a husky healer, maybe some German shepherd. He's like 45 pounds. He's kind of like black, but he's got some like healer coloring in his chest.
Yeah, I
He's
mean,
he's pretty good.
the dog must love it. Would the dog like van life though? That is what the
Oh
everyone wonder. The
yeah. He
dog's
loves it. Well, I guess it depends where we are, but like if we want to be in the van, we want to be somewhere where it's yeah, somewhere probably in nature where like he can kind of roam around. We're not by a lot of other people.
Mhm.
Um, so he can just like he likes to be an outside dog. Um, so yeah, he likes being in the van. And too often then when we're in the van, we're like on vacation or camping, so he gets a lot more attention from us as well.
Yeah, the dog's a attention grabber. Loves it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Olin, I mean, I'm just thinking of this now, but as a NCAA champion, mostly in the 5K, what's your perspective on people like, Nico and Graham running just insane times
Oh,
right now?
it's been incredible to watch. Like, I feel like even in my last couple years of college, like I feel like the times that people were running were exploding across the board. And I kind of thought that would slow down, and if anything, it's just gotten even faster.
Hmm.
Um, like the acceleration of the progress. And it's been really impressive to watch. I think all those collegiate runners are doing amazing. I'm really excited to watch NCAAs this year. I think it's gonna be a great tactical race in those distance races. And it's gonna be really exciting.
Yeah, and this is my last question I have to ask. You ran at BU. How fast is the BU track for anyone who has not raced it?
So yeah, it's fast. It's a really nice track. I think I was noticing it, especially afterwards, then going and racing at Albuquerque, because I think part of the reason it's fast is because of the profile of the turns.
Hmm.
Which are like they're well made for distance runners. And so like the curve on the turn starts like right away. Whereas like in Albuquerque, it was kind of like you got to the turn, but it was kind of flat initially, and then the the curve started like further into the turn. Whereas in BU, like right when you start turning, the incline's there, and I feel like that helps. And then yeah, maybe it's just like it might be just a feel thing. It might be just like an environment thing. It might be just because it might be like a placebo thing, but it just feels bouncy, you know? It
Yeah.
just feels fast.
If anyone here watching goes to BU or watches a race at BU, if you look very closely, you'll see literally just the floor bounce up and down at
Mhm.
every single step, and it's ridiculous. You have to watch it a few times laps around, but I mean the thing actually just literally bounces, which
It
is
really does. It really
it's
does.
crazy. Well, Lynn, good luck with the big championship up ahead.
This year.
You're gonna kill it, and thank you everyone for watching. Till our next lap. See ya.